Hi, I'm Allie, the hands behind the turtle trunk, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this amigurumi coconut. If you're following along with the Pregnancy Progress Project, this is week 31 when baby is about the same size as a coconut at just over 3 pounds. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Now let's get started. For today's tutorial, you will need medium weight yarn in the colors white and brown, a 4mm or G hook, a yarn needle, stitch marker, and scissors, and an optional supply is black crochet thread. We're going to start with our brown yarn and we're going to begin by making a magic circle. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our index finger and our middle finger, wrap it around once and then bring it back around and cross it over. So now we have 2 strands on our fingers. We're going to insert our hook under the first strand, grab the second strand, pull it under and flip it up. And then we're going to secure our circle with a chain 1. Now for round 1, we are going to work 7 single crochets inside the circle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to just take this small tail end here and pull it tight to close up that hole. So at the end of round 7, our total stitch count is, at the end of round 1, our total stitch count is 7. So going straight into that very first stitch, we're going to start round 2 off with a single crochet, and we're going to work another single crochet inside that same stitch. I'm just going to grab my stitch marker so I don't lose my place and make sure I put it into the very first one I worked. So for round 2, we're just going to work 2 single crochets into each stitch around. So 2 single crochets into the second stitch, 2 single crochets into the third stitch. We're going to just repeat that around all the way around for round 2. 2 single crochets into each stitch around. I'm just on the last stitch of round 2. I'm going to work 2 single crochets. And at the end of round 2, our stitch count is now at 14. Now for round 3, we're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch. And then 2 single crochets into the second stitch. And we're going to repeat that around all the way around. So 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the next stitch. 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and 2 single crochets into the next. So we're going to repeat that around for round 3. I'm just on the last stitch of round 3, so I'm going to work 2 single crochets in that last stitch. And at the end of round 3, our stitch count is now at 21. Now on to round 4, I'm going to work 1 single crochet to the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the second stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the third stitch. And I'm going to repeat that around all the way around for round 4. So 1 single crochet in the first 2 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. I'm just going to repeat that around for round 4. I'm just on the last stitch of round 4, so I'm going to work 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And at the end of round 4, our stitch count is now at 28. Now on to round 5, I'm going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the second stitch, and 1 single crochet into the third stitch. And then I'm going to work 2 single crochets into the next stitch. I'm going to repeat that around for round 5. So 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. I'm just going to repeat that around for round 5. I'm just on the last stitch of round 5, so I'm going to work 2 single crochets in that last stitch. So at the end of round 5, our total stitch count is now at 35. For round 6, I'm going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the second stitch, 1 single crochet into the third stitch, and 1 single crochet into the fourth stitch. In the fifth stitch, I'm going to work 2 single crochets. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. That's 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. I'm going to repeat that around for round 6. I'm just coming up to the end of round 6, and in that last stitch I'm going to work 2 single crochets. And at the end of round 6, our stitch count will now be at 42. For round 7, I'm going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the second stitch, 1 single crochet into the third stitch, 1 single crochet into the fourth stitch, and 1 single crochet into the fifth stitch. And then I'm going to work 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet in each of the next 5 stitches, and then 2 single crochets into the next. 1 single crochet in each of the next 5 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. I'm going to repeat that around for round 7. I'm just coming up to the end of round 7, and in that last stitch I'm going to work 2 single crochets. So at the end of round 7, our total stitch count is now at 49. So I'm going to work 1 more increase round. So for round 8, we're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the second, 1 single crochet into the third, 1 single crochet into the fourth, 1 single crochet into the fifth, and 1 single crochet into the sixth. Then we're going to work 2 single crochets into the seventh stitch. And we're just going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet in each of the first 6 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And we're just going to repeat that around for round 8. I'm just coming up to the end of round 8, and in that last stitch I'm going to work 2 single crochets. And at the end of round 8, our total stitch count will now be at 56. So now for rounds 9 through 13, so that's the next 5 rounds, we're just going to be working 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So we're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and just work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. And our stitch count is going to remain at 56. And we're just going to continue this for 5 rounds. So this is round 9. And we're just going to repeat this 1 single crochet into each stitch around until we reach the end of round 13. So I'm just going to continue on doing this, and I'm going to catch up with you guys at the end of round 13. I'm just coming up to the end of round 13. So at the end of round 13, our total stitch count is still at 56, and that's all we're going to do for the outer shell. So what I'm going to do is take off my stitch marker, work a slip stitch into that very first stitch, chain one. I'm going to grab my scissors and cut off, leaving just a couple inches. I'm going to take my hook and pull on that loop and pull that tight. And now we're just going to set this outer shell aside, and now we're going to make the inner part of our coconut. So we need to grab our white yarn. And for our inner shell, it's actually going to be the exact same thing that we did for our outer shell. And then we're going to sew the two pieces together. So exactly like we did for the outer shell, I'm going to start with a magic circle. Chain one. And then inside the circle, we're going to single crochet 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pull the small tail tight to close up the hole. Then for round 2, we are going to work 2 single crochets into that very first stitch. So that's 1 single crochet and 2 single crochet into the same stitch, and then we're going to work 2 single crochets into each stitch around. And at the end of round 2, our stitch count is at 14. For round 3, we're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch and 2 single crochets into the second stitch. And we're going to repeat that all the way around for round 3. 1 single crochet in the first stitch, 2 single crochets in the next. And at the end of round 3, our total stitch count will now be at 21. For round 4, we are going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. So that was 1 in the first and 1 in the second. And then in the third stitch, we're going to work 2 single crochets. We're going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, then 2 single crochets in the next. And at the end of round 4, our stitch count is now at 28. Now on to round 5. For round 5, we are going to work 1 single crochet in each of the first 3 stitches. So it was 1 in the first, 1 in the second, and 1 single crochet in the third, and then 2 single crochets in the next. We're going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And at the end of round 5, our stitch count will now be at 35. On to round 6, we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. So that was 1 in the first, 1 in the second, 1 in the third, 1 in the fourth, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And at the end of round 6, our total stitch count will now be at 42. Now on to round 7, we are going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. So that was 1 in the first, 1 into the second, 1 into the third, 1 into the fourth, and 1 into the fifth, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. 1 single crochet in each of the next 5 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And at the end of round 7, our total stitch count is now at 49. Now we're on to round 8, which is our last increase round. So for round 8, we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. So 1 in the first, 1 into the second, into the third, 1 into the fourth, 1 into the fifth, and 1 into the sixth, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And at the end of round 8, our total stitch count is now at 56. And now before we move on to round 9, I'm going to stop here to add the face to my coconut. So if you notice for this video, I didn't put safety eyes as one of the supplies. So I'm just going to make my eyes with crochet thread. Now you can use safety eyes, except since this is going to be flat, we're just going to sew this onto our back panel. So it's going to be fairly flat, so the safety eyes might poke out at the back, so that's why I chose not to use them. I have made a coconut before that did have the safety eyes, so here it is. And what I did is I put a little polyfill stuffing between the white layer and the brown layer, and that kind of prevented them from poking from behind, but they still did a little bit. So that's why I'm choosing not to use them today. So if you do want to use safety eyes, just note that they may poke out the back a little bit, and maybe if you add a little bit of polyfill stuffing between the layers that can help a little bit, but they still may poke out. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're making this for a baby toy or a pet toy, that the safety eyes might poke out the back. So for today, I'm just going to be using crochet thread, and I'm just going to make a cute little laughing face. So to do so, I'm going to take my crochet thread and my yarn needle. I'm just going to thread my needle. I'm going to work the face just right in the middle here. So I'm going to start with the eyes. I'm going to start by going through the back, and at round about between 2 and 3. And all I'm going to do is make a little V shape, but it's going to be sideways. So the V is going to be going this way. You might need to play around with this a little bit to get them to be even and straight. So I just made a line this way. I'm going to go back through where I originally went through, and then bring the V down here. So that's one eye. So as you see, it's just a sideways V. And now I'm going to make another eye. I'm going to try my best to match this one, but on the opposite this side. So I'm going to go through the back. And that's between rounds 2 and 3. I'm just trying to make it as even as possible. It's hard, especially when you have increases in there, because the stitches don't perfectly line up. But just try your best. Okay, go back through where I originally came through and finish off the other side of the V. That's fairly even. So now for the mouth, I'm just going to make a V right between them, right in the middle, as close to the middle as I can get. So I'm going to start with the bottom of the V. Just trying to get right in the center. I'm going to go up to one side, back down through the center, and then up to the other side. I think that's pretty cute, so I think I'm going to leave that as is. I'm just going to turn it around. I know my back is really messy, but we're not going to be able to see it, so it's okay. So I'm just going to tighten up my thread because it's a little loose, and then I'm just going to tie the two ends of this together. I like to keep my thread fairly loose. I don't like to tighten it too tight, or else it can get hidden between the stitches. So just make sure you tie a couple knots, and you don't need to make them too terribly tight. And just going to do one more. Okay, I'm just going to grab my scissors and trim the excess strands. And there we go. There's our little face for our coconut. So now I'm just going to continue on where we left off. So we are now on to round 9. And just like that back panel we made for the outer shell of our coconut, we are going to work the next 5 rounds. So that's rounds 9 to 13, just working 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So our stitch count is going to remain at 56 for the next 5 rounds. We're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to catch up with you guys at the end of round 13. I just did the last stitch of round 13. So at the end of round 13, our stitch count should still be at 56. So now we're pretty much done with our coconut. We're just going to sew the inner circle to the outer circle. So our outer shell and our inner shell. So I'm just going to take my outer shell and just put all the ends right inside the middle. Place the inner shell right inside. And now you can attach these any ways you want. You can cut this white strand long and just sew it together with your needle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch the 2 pieces together. You can single crochet them together. You can really do whatever you want. So I'm just going to hide all my ends inside there. And I'm just going to insert my hook into the next stitch of the white. And then I'm also going to put it into the next stitch of the brown. Now each shell, the inner and the outer, both have 56 stitches, so that just means you're always going to be wanting to work in the corresponding stitch of each side. And I'm just going to work a slip stitch in the first one and then move to the next stitch, making sure I'm going through both the inner and the outer layer. Work another slip stitch. And I'm working these slip stitches fairly loose because I don't want to cinch it up. I'm just going to connect the 2 ends. Okay, into the next stitch, work a slip stitch. We're just going to repeat this all the way around. So it'll be a total of 56 slip stitches all the way around. And like I said, you can single crochet them together, you can sew them together, whatever you like, but each way is going to create a different look. So with the slip stitch, when you have this folded down, as it will be when it's all finished, you're going to have a little white ridge and a brown ridge when you look at it from the top. So that's the look I'm going for. Because of the way a slip stitch is worked, there is going to be a little white stitching on the outside, but I don't mind that too much. If you do just single crochets, you're not going to be able to see the brown from the view from the top. And then if you just sew them together, you'll be able to see both. So it's really just what you want to do. So I'm just going to continue around, slip stitching all the way around, making sure I'm working in both the white and the brown layers. So I'm just going to continue around, and I'll catch up with you guys when I reach the end, and I'll show you how to tie off and finish up our coconut. I'm just on the last slip stitch. So when I reach the end, I'm just going to chain 1 and grab my scissors. Cut off, leaving about 6 inches. Take my hook and pull. Then I'm just going to weave in this end. So I'm going to grab my yarn needle and thread this. And then since this is the white yarn, I'm just going to make sure I only weave it into the white. And just weave it in so it's hidden in there. I'm just going to work it up around the side, going in and out a few times. And then I'm just going to cut off, and then the end will be hidden on the inside. Cut that. And there we go, there's our little coconut. Thank you so much for following along, and I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I'd love to have you a part of the Turtle Trunk family. You can find this pattern and more free patterns on my new blog, whoshomemade.com. If you also follow me on Facebook and Instagram, be sure to tag me in your photos so I can see your finished turtle trunk creations. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.